Okay, Year 10s, good evening. So I thought I'd just kind of make a bit of a review video around the sine rule and then compare it to the cosine rule. I really think it's worth noting kind of like the difference, but ultimately the similarities around the purpose, I mean, they're really the same. The purpose of the sine rule and the purpose of the cosine rule are really the same thing. They are to both determine an unknown side or an unknown angle of any right angle triangle. That's what they're both used for. It just so happens to be that they just have different conditions under which you would use a sine or a cosine rule. And you need to know the difference because then in an exam, you know that, these are the conditions under which I would apply the sine rule, and these are the conditions under which I would apply the cosine rule. Go ahead and read the conditions for each one. So this image relates to condition 1 and this image relates to condition 2. Have a look at the sine rule, for example, okay? So I really liked the way that it was taught by Mr. Buckley, in that what you would do is find, using your intuition, the ratio of a side and an angle that you know. So we know that one. And now find the ratio of a side to an angle where you don't know one of them. And provided with those ratios, if you know 3, but you don't know 1, you can apply that to the sine rule. And it's the same thing with condition 2. It's the same thing. The only difference is with this condition, we now have an unknown side versus an unknown angle. I hope that made sense. So formally, if, for example, in condition 1, if you're trying or if you're asked to find an angle, which we are asked to find, you must then know, ready, 2 sides and a non-included angle. And here they are here. There's the 2 sides and the non-included angle is here. That would be the included angle. We're not looking for that one because then you wouldn't have a corresponding side. So essentially what we need is the ratio between a side and angle that you know and the ratio between a side and an angle where one of them you don't know, which you're asked to find. For either scenario 1 or 2, the only difference being, in this case, you just don't know the side, in this case, you know the angle. Okay, so from there, you would go through an example, you would fill out, this would become your A, that would become your sine A or sine 45, you're just substituting here, equals 8, which would go here, or B, divided by sine B or sine theta, and you would go ahead and solve for theta here. Okay, I'm not going to go through the example for the sine rule, but I definitely will go through the example for the cosine rule in the next video. But let's have a look at the cosine rule. We will not be deriving at this stage where the cosine rule comes from, but here it is. It does have some roots in the ideas of Pythagoras' theorem. You can see the first part of the cosine rule, c squared equals a squared plus b squared. It is Pythagoras' theorem, but we've just got an attachment on the end where we are subtracting 2ab multiplied by cos c, or the cosine of c. Okay. So again, the purpose is to determine an unknown side or an angle of any non-right angle triangle, just like the sine rule. Here are the conditions. So for the first condition, if you're asked to find an angle, you must know all 3 sides. So you need to know the complete perimeter, if you like, of the triangle. So 13, 14, and 7 in this, 9 in this example. Or in the other scenario, if finding a side, you need to know the remaining 2 sides plus the internal, or what I would call the included angle. So that's it's the angle in between or connected to the 2 lines. Okay. So let's just review. You need to know all three sides if you're asked to find an angle, or you need to know two sides at an included angle if you're asked to find a side. So they're the four conditions total that you need to be aware of, two of which apply to the sine rule. And I think of ratios, right? Ratios of sides to angles for sine rules. And for cosine rule, I think SSS, ready? And SAS. That's kind of how I think about it, all right? Okay, I'll leave it at that, but in the next video, we're going to use this cosine rule along with the key ideas from these two conditions to determine the unknown angle and an unknown side in two examples. All right, thank you.